Well, Glenn, you must have had a great weekend down there in Gulfport, or wherever you were.
Ocean Springs,
Ocean
and I
Springs,
did have a
okay.
great time.
Yeah, there we
That
go.
downtown area is awesome. Lots of good eats.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have Glenn back. He did not make the trip to Ruston. I made the trip to Ruston, and I gave my thoughts after the game on the field, which you heard, which was my terrible thoughts. But we're going to turn it over to the football expert right here, Glenn Dyar. Glenn, what was your thoughts after the football game? Southern Miss 30-20 loss against Louisiana Tech.
Well, we talked the week before, Coach Huff, about this is the first road game. There's always a lot of new stuff that goes along with that. A lot of times in a situation like that, when you're on the opponent's turf, you got to make your own energy. And Coach kind of talked about during the week, as they're warming up during the game, he instinctually kind of felt like we don't have the juice we need, and it may tell the tale. And in that first quarter, at least, La Tech I thought was a more physical football team.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we played a better second half defensively, but when you get down that far, it's tough to come back from that.
We talked all week last week about Louisiana Tech and the way they were, struggling to throw the football. And it was, actually my bold prediction, Glenn, which was like done within the first 2 snaps of the game, was that Southern Miss would hold them under 100 yards passing. And they did do that in the second half. But, it was 2 plays, and it was just kind of like, what in the world? They slipped the tight end out. Coach Huff talked about that the guy who was on him just didn't even see him and go by him. So it was just like fundamental errors, but that just gave the other side so much more momentum on offense. And then it really felt like they couldn't stop each other for that whole first half. It felt like we were about to see a shootout. And so going into this week, Jacksonville State, a little bit different team than Louisiana Tech, where they're run first, pass second. Do you think Southern Miss will continue with that same approach on defense, man across the board, and kind of pile up the box? Because I don't know if it necessarily worked, because in the second half, he said they were man, but I don't know if they were man or not. I don't remember seeing that. I'm trusting him.
Yeah, they were man early and muddied the box up. It's just the safety just took the play action and bid on it.
Right.
And the tight end's running. You and I might have
70
gotten,
down.
we might have got 20, 30 yards on that. But anyway, no, this is a kind of a similar animal. JSU is going to have a big 230-pound quarterback who can run with the football.
Mm-hmm.
He's only about a 50% passer, so they lean. It's a run-heavy air raid, so they're going to lean on the run. But their OC Clint Trickett was Coach Huff's OC over at Marshall for 2 years. So he has a great familiarity with Clint. He's a really good coach, and he's good at making things look the same but not the same. So you can get tricked on his RPO stuff. He does a lot of misdirection stuff, but he's going to be a downhill power guy too. And his dad, Rick, is the O-line coach there, and he's probably the best living O-line coach in the country right now. And you can see it with their O-line. They're not the biggest group, but they're probably as technically sound as anybody that I've seen on film this year that we've played.
A lot of talk in that press conference that we just sat through for about 30, 35 minutes with Coach Huff about preparation, and you mentioned it at the start about him seeing early that he didn't feel like his team was going to be ready to play that game. And we talked with Elijah Metcalf, wide receiver, at the very end, and he told us, he said right before they went on the field even, he said, I think we're going into a trap. And so he said today that he thought yesterday was one of their better practices that they've ever had. Glenn, do you buy into that preparation was a big reason they lost that game, and that maybe this week the preparation's better and maybe they win? Do you think there's a lot to that, or do you think, that's part of it? But, when you watch the game, the real difference in the game was Louisiana Tech scored in the red zone. Southern Miss didn't.
Yeah, that's obvious. But, back to preparation. Preparation's huge. And I think Coach Huff, he was a ball player. He's been a coach. He's coached at the highest level. He's got a gut for it. He knows it. And he saw it during the week. His kids didn't buy the hype from him. I think this is going to be a great teaching tool. You hope going forward this is a great lesson for when they're back on the road.
Yeah.
At Georgia Southern down the road, that they're going to take a little more heed to what coaches told them. You weren't ready this week. You didn't do what you needed to do this week, and you paid the price.
I think that's such an interesting point because, again, we talked to Elijah Metcalf, and he said to us that a lot of us as a team kind of didn't believe him, which was very interesting. And then I asked him after that, and I said, hey, now that it's happened, are you going to believe in him next time? And he said, of course we are. So I think that was a huge learning tool, like you said, for the team going forward for the Golden Eagles.
Yeah, and I think that the leadership that is, the seniors on that team. I think they're gonna take that to heart, and they're gonna reinforce that next time out. And if they don't, shame on them. It's a hard lesson, but it's a simple lesson.
Next thing I want to talk about, and then we'll get out of here. But Braylon Braxton, you asked Coach Huff about it, and I asked Coach Huff about it after the game. He kind of gave the same answer, but his ability with his legs is so critical to his playmaking. And I thought there were several plays in that game on Saturday where, especially there was one play in particular on the goal line where I think if he just lowered his shoulder, he would have easily made it in. And then there was another play where you mentioned that he was scrambling left. I think it was 3rd and 9. It was a third down. It was a crucial play in the third quarter. He was scrambling left. I thought he could have just ran probably 15, 20 yards, and he might have even scored. He tried to float it over to Micah Davis. What do you think about him is making him hesitant to do that?
I don't know. It's just as we've said before, it's his greatest asset. And when you watch film of him last year, one of the things that made them so great was, his ability to just take off and rip off huge chunks of yardage. His legs are his greatest asset. There are not a whole lot of quarterbacks that have that ability. So for me, it's like, don't overthink it. Be instinctual. If you see it, take it. If they're giving it to you, take it. And there are not a lot of quarterbacks that can take it like you can take it. So, use it to your advantage. Don't think so much. Don't feel like, for me, I'm wondering coming into this year and you're looking at the ability to, to get a chance at the next level. Yeah. And they're going to want to see the guy that keeps his eyes downfield and makes the big throws.
Right.
Well, maybe not. I'm not saying that's what he's thinking, but for me, I'm like, I don't hope he doesn't get caught up in that and uses, his God-given ability, which, he's got a ton of it. Just use your instincts. If they're giving it to you, take it.
Well, this week will definitely be a great litmus test for the Golden Eagles when they play Jacksonville State. Last week, Jacksonville State actually played Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern won that football game, I think 41-34. So both of the Southern Miss's two next opponents both played each other. So it'll be a nice litmus test to see where Southern Miss stands when they take the trip to Statesboro. And I think that's a Thursday night game, actually. So so that'll be interesting. I think it's a 7 p.m. kick. But obviously, Southern Miss isn't looking past Jacksonville State. This is going to be another good opponent. Coming into the year, I really didn't think Jacksonville State would come in here and, be a huge challenge because they only had, I think, 2 or 3 returning starters and new coach, new everything. But really, Glenn, they have surprised a lot of people, and they're probably just as good as Louisiana Tech, if not equal.
Yeah, I totally agree. Great coaching staff with SEC experience.
Yeah.
O-line coach is the best coach in the business. He could coach for me any day of the week. Very well coached football team. In the G5 level, there's not a ton of separation between talent level at any of the schools. A lot of times it's going to come down to the coaching and execution. They're well coached and they execute. They've done that thus far.
And of course, Southern Miss fans know what happened when Southern Miss took the trip to Jacksonville State last season, and that was, just a disaster. And that was pretty much, to me, Glenn, that was the start of the end for that season for Will Hall.
It was crushing.
I thought honestly he was gone after that game. Of course, different team, different coach, everything like that. But I don't think Southern Miss fans forget that. And but we'll see what happens. We'll both be there at the Rock this week. Glenn, we'll make the game.
I will be here as long as there's food in the press box. I'll show up.
There's not going to be popcorn there. There was popcorn in the Louisiana Tech press box, and I was very happy to see that. But
yeah, we got to get the Pete Taylor popcorn over here.
I would honestly volunteer to roll it over each Saturday if they would.
God said that's enough. You need to play that, pick it back up, and look into it.
We'll see you at the Rock on Saturday.